You know, there is a time in our lives where we see that a certain franchise can sometimes have a really bad thing in its roster. Let me show you. For every Pokemon Indigo League anime, there is a Pokemon Black and White anime. For every Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, there is a Paper Mario Sticker Star. And for every Toy Story 3, there is a Cars 2. Sometimes even long-running shows even have a few problems. Sesame Street had been growing since 1969, and its charm sometimes doesn't feel as good as what we saw all that long ago. The Simpsons and Family Guy have been running out of steam and aren't as classic as they were 30 years ago. And SpongeBob just doesn't want to end. Or at least Nickelodeon doesn't want him to end. Now, when it comes to Thomas, it also has quite a few issues. After 5 amazing seasons with great stories and classic moments, once Thomas and the Magic Railroad came out, everything good came to a complete and utter halt. There are still some good things about it, but overall it wasn't getting any better, such as Season 6 and 7 not being as good as before, the hit era where things started to look the same and very lame, to the start of the Nitrogen era where it was very disappointing after an amazing promising movie with Hero of the Rails.
Damn have nice things!
Now, I'm not saying there's nothing good in these parts of Thomas's history, but they are in a way missteps to what made Thomas so enjoyable in his 80-year lifespan. But with this, I think we can all agree that this misstep is by far the worst it's ever been. The year is 2010. Thomas was celebrating its then 65th anniversary around this time. Season 13 was airing after Hero of the Rails, and needless to say, it was disappointing. While the visuals are great and the new voices for the characters are good or bad depending on which dub you're watching, the writing is still the same as the previous seasons, especially with Sharon Miller's favorite formula, the Three Strikes formula. Needless to say, just because it's CGI now doesn't mean it's any better. We would hope that things would improve in the next season, and it almost seemed that way. One day a trailer was put out introducing us to the Thomas special that would release that same year.
Now available on DVD. Thomas fans won't believe their eyes. Thomas ventures to a new island in the action-packed adventure Misty Island Rescue.
Cranky! Salty, look! That must be Misty Island!
Some say there are strange engines that live there.
The engines are working hard to build the Soda Search and Rescue Center, and just in time, as Thomas is lost.
Fizzling fireboxes! The chain to the steamboat has snapped! Help!
The engines must find their missing friend.
I've been all over, sir. There's no sign of Thomas.
And Thomas meets 3 new friends.
I'm Thomas. Who are you?
I'm Bash!
I'm Dash!
And I'm Ferdinand.
We live here!
Join Thomas and friends as they discover the mysteries of Misty Island in Misty Island Rescue. Now available on DVD.
The special showed us Thomas was leaving Sodor for the first time. However, he gets lost at sea and ends up on a mysterious island. And it's here where Thomas meets 3 American logging engines. Needless to say, we were excited. All of us were hoping that this movie would start on improving upon what went wrong with Season 13, and build up more epicness that Hero of the Rails began. But it was never lived up to. So, on September 7th, 2010, the DVD was finally released, and we liked it.
Huh? What?
Yeah, at first, we Thomas fans actually liked Misty Island Rescue. Of course, it wasn't immediate at first. We did still notice the bad writing as well as the overabundance of rhyming that is everywhere, but at the time, it was a serviceable special. The visuals were amazing, and the location looked interesting. But as the years passed, we slowly started to see that Misty Island Rescue is quite possibly the worst Thomas movie ever made at that point. Yes, even worse than Thomas and the Magic Railroad. But why did we like this movie at first? Well, there are some points to this. There are even some fans that have stated as such that I asked in places such as Twitter and Discord. Here's a couple. Kid me thought it was mid. I was too focused on Whiff and Percy in the tunnel, but then logging Locos and Gordon, James, Edward, whoever it was on that boat and bullshit, and basically I didn't really know what was going on, so I just ignored it and played with my take-along Ferdinand. I honestly thought it was okay first time seeing it in theaters. The song in the end credits was catchy, however the film could have been handled better in my opinion. Yeah, there are a lot of things that needed to be fixed with this movie, like maybe give the logging locos a controller who is secretly evil. I liked it for the first few years, but then as time went on, it became meh. I loved it. Amazing animation. I enjoyed it. This movie takes place in spring. This movie is focused on Thomas, Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand. No main antagonist. Love the narrations, especially Michael Brandon. Love the song. This is the second movie when Thomas leaves Sodor. I'm pretty sure that last one was just a joke because it just sounds very sarcastic. Like, why would you like a movie with no main antagonist? Spencer in Hero of the Rails was a very amazing villain. Wanting to scrap a fellow engine just to hurt Thomas? That's an amazing villain arc. But having no main villain in this movie just doesn't feel right. And before you say so, no, Diesel doesn't count because he wasn't being evil. He was just trying to prove that he could deliver the Joby wood to the search and rescue center due to Thomas saying that diesels can't be useful. And Diesel 10 was only in the last few seconds of the movie as a teaser for Day of the Diesels coming out next year. Going back to TB7 Studios' comment, giving the logging locos a controller who is secretly evil sounds like a much better idea, cause if you notice, there's no humans on Misty Island whatsoever. So, like, does the crew live inside their own engines or in those cranes? Imagine being the crane operator for old Wheezy. Must not be a fun time. Anyways, I would love to see an evil controller, like telling the locking logos to do their work, and then eventually Sir Topham Hatt purchases them, which makes their presence on Sodor more rewarding. Instead, these engines are more like lemmings and very much like hillbillies, which is such a shame because they're all American steam engines after the introduction of Hank the K4 in Season 12. Wasted potential here. But still, these characters were pretty unlikable for about 3 seasons for the rest of the Nitrogen era. And much like Scrappy-Doo, the engines in Misty Island were never brought up in the entire Brenner era. Only for like various jokes and mentions. Looks like Andrew Brenner has a distaste for Misty Island as we do. Gotta respect the man. Anyways, what I think made us think Misty Island was a masterpiece was the hype. Hit Entertainment spared no expense in the marketing. There was toys, books, it was shown in movie theaters and aired on PBS for 2 months before it would come out on DVD. And in New York, the Thomas Shining Time Station life-size replica was used, seen on a barge with various Misty Island Rescue toys, and was pulled by a tugboat. No other special got this big of a promotion. Not even Big World Big Adventures got something this big. But as soon as the novelty wore off, we would see many cracks until finally the whole teapot broke. The writing is still as horrid as it was in Season 13. The rhyming is non-stop where people think Thomas is a Dr. Seuss character.
One biff, one bash, and there's never a crash. I make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold.
And on top of that, there's nonsensical things everywhere. Like the Shake Shake Bridge on the island. It doesn't collapse because potatoes. Sir Topham Hatt wants to build his office in the Misty Island Tunnel. What sense does that make? Whiff, who was introduced in Season 11, apparently knows about Misty Island because the tunnel was used to collect trash from the island. And also the part that made Unlucky Tug lose his fudge is Sir Topham Hatt bringing Gordon, James, and Edward to Misty Island to look for Thomas.
Literally, this moment in the film broke me. I became so pissed at this point that I could not contain myself. Sir Topham Hatt sends 3 of his engines to Misty Island on a goddamn boat. Why? Why? Why do that when there's a tunnel to the island? A tunnel you clearly knew about. Yeah, the tunnel is blocked, but no one on Sodor knew that. But then he decides to just send engines down the tunnel anyway? So why are you sending engines on the boat still? And why are you sending 3 of them? Also, why are you sending engines to the island when there is a rescue team for this exact kind of scenario that was introduced earlier? One of which is a boat that can cross the water to the island in 10 minutes, and another that is a helicopter that can fly to it in 2 minutes. Why did the movie set up a whole rescue center and a rescue team only to not use them in the scene where they go and rescue someone? I can't even finish this movie. My vocal cords are straining right now.
So we all liked this movie for about 5 minutes and then wrote it off as terrible not too long after. Especially since we would get better specials later on like Blue Mountain Mystery and Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. Thomas fans I knew back in the day enjoyed this special. Like, I remember in an old Q&A from classic Thomas YouTuber Miss Oliver and Blossom saying that he found Misty Island Rescue as his favorite movie. We were all so dumb back then, but he would later retract this statement in one of his final videos on his old channel. Sadly, it's not up anymore, but you get what I mean. So yeah, many fans, including myself, did like the special. We hailed it as a masterpiece, but after a while, it just got really worse, especially in repeat viewing. So yeah, Misty Island Rescue. We liked it once, but never again. And we all rejoiced when it was actively retconned as soon as Andrew Brenner came on board. So happy. Misty Island's last hurrah, so to say, was Toby being scared of Misty Island while taking Rheneas to find a Christmas tree. What a way to go out. Before we end this video, I have one more comment to share. When Misty Island first came out, I was one of the people who liked it. The writing style was bad, that much was always apparent, but I think it was the movie's high concept that made it appealing when it was new. A big adventure movie that takes Thomas off Sodor with a cinematic score to accompany it. It's one of those movies that seems impressive the first time you watch it, and then it gets worse and worse on every rewatch. Things start to not make sense the more you think about it. You start questioning the logic of every decision, and the whole thing falls apart. It's the Cars 2 of Thomas. Haha. That final comment was interesting, but how interesting? Well, that comment came from none other than the Lucky Tug from Patreon during his Q&A. So you see, we all had a likeness for Misty Island at some point, but after that first viewing, that magic disappeared. But at the very least, we did get much better Thomas movies before the show ended. It was something to look forward to in a sense. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. Woodfox out.